I'm Anna.
I'm Ben.
We're AutoSave. Welcome to our
Today
channel.
we're watching Nekomonogatari Black, Episode 1. I think you and I are kind of on the same page of what our guesses are going into the series.
Yeah, what we possibly expect, especially by the title. Basically the title alone.
Hanekawa, right?
Hanekawa, yeah.
4 episodes, I believe this series is. I don't know how long each are, but I'm very interested to see what it details.
When I would hear that there's 4, it would take me back to Kizu, which would make me think it's
movie.
They're like movie length.
Yeah.
They're at least over 45 minutes.
It could be like a middle ground, like OVA style, 40 minutes instead of like an hour and a half each. I don't know. Ready?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Okay, Tsukihi already.
Oh no.
She's not truly dangerous.
Ah. So this is prior? Okay. This is a different vibe. An acoustic guitar. We love it. Silhouette into the moon. I feel like we're about to watch like the soap opera version of Monogatari. Tsubasa family. Oh no. Yep.
We learned this.
Wow. What a wild shot.
Is this the before Senjugahara, Hanekawa would have been the one that he would have fallen for?
Yeah. Jesus.
Definitely not set in stone if it's who we're thinking about. Playing the straight man. Awfully specific, aren't we? Is this gonna hurt me? Nekomonogatari is gonna hurt me.
No. That is truly love.
The more personal information, the better help you can be. Yeah. Who opened the window?
The next year of your life is going to be absolutely insane.
I'd be interested to hear what Tsukihi as a character
One
would say.
reason or another. I really just did. Aww. Tsukihi looks so much like Araragi in this episode. Ooh.
That's why I hate when people ask you, like, what do you love about the person? It's decided!
お前に決められちゃしょうがない。そうだな。まあいろいろ言っちゃったけどさ、お兄ちゃん、好きになるなんて犬が吠えるくらい当たり前のことなんだ。
But not a talking dog.
当たり前か。うん、普通だよ。クラスに気になる女子がいるのは普通。
Ordinary, not an oddity. Normal.
But to fall in love with a girl that is an oddity. Abnormal.
月ちゃん、お前一体何を言ってるの？私の側ですか？お前も正座した方がいいんじゃない？
Ooh.
だからさ、その H さんの胸部が非常に魅力的なので、触りたい、揉みたいって思うわけじゃないか。どういう話をしているんだよ。ちょっとごめんお兄ちゃん。触ると露骨な言葉を使うのをやめても。
Be more objective and scientific. Oh my god.
そうか。じゃあ、タッチするしかないわけじゃない。したいということばかり考えているわけなんだが、これは恋でいいんだな。違う。
Lust.
好きでもない相手の胸にタッチしたいとは思わないだろう。だからこの気持ちは恋に違いないと思うのだ。男の子が女の子のおっぱいにタッチしたいと思うのは自然な感情なんだ。
Some would probably want to, even if they didn't love the person.
まったく試してみようと思って。これ触ってみ。
She gave him permission. But yet
What the?
rescued. I would agree with that. Breast warning.
What?
I need to pull this.
胸を突き出してきたんだよ。っていうかお試しっていうかそんな胸には興味がないとか言って自分の理論の正当性を主張しようとするけれど。
That is not what happened.
No.
妹の胸だからでしょ。
We knew as soon as she put the test on the table it was gonna happen.
で、そのお試しとやらでどういう結論が導き出されるんだ？欲求不満なんじゃない？なんと。ほら、そういえばさ、エッチな本が買えない、エッチな本が買えないって。
You did say that.
3回も言ってねえよ。それが逆効果なんだよ。性欲を恋と取り違えてしまったお兄ちゃん。
Oh no.
欲求不満のインフレスパイラルを起こしちゃってるんだよ。インフレスパイラル。そんな007
He has it rough.
現象が僕の脳内で起こっていると。見境なくタッチしちゃうんだよ。タッチしちゃうのか。タッチパネルみたいなその胸に。欲求不満か。しかしどころか。
Can't believe her fist made it that far in.
See, you're gonna be fine, Anna. It's not love. It wasn't love.
On his end, maybe. We do know it's a serious request.
That's true.
So frustrated. That was for the last thing we just watched. Amazing after Nisa.
Flimsy and selfish.
Just wait, he's even gonna steal your first kiss.
Surely we're gonna go do it. And Miss H is going to be there. Tsukihi's locked in. She's figured it out.
So smart. Oh, it's just now opening?
Hi, Karen.
Is it raining?
Look at the like the standing water.
Impressive. Honestly, impressive.
I feel that.
Well, you didn't
Jesus!
you wouldn't even jog. You just try for the marathon. Gotta rehydrate.
Need to get like the energy packs. The goos.
The goose.
The energy goos.
ちょっと教えてほしいことがあるんだけど。
なんだ、ついに兄ちゃんも空手道を歩みたくなったのか。
教えてほしいことというのは奥義とかじゃない。お前さ、自分が恋をしているかどうか。
You gotta check in with both.
Yeah.
どんな風に判断する？
ああ、なんだね。
You could never just ask advice from one person, one person's perspective.
こいつのガキを見てえなって思ったら、それが好きってことなんじゃねえの？
There you go, Karen.
It's all about procreation. I get it now.
I don't know. Karen and Tsukihi are somewhat on opposing sides. Oh no. The bandage.
荒木くん、いえ、元気してる？
What an interesting angle of his face.
ね、荒木くん。
Oh my god.
Black undies.
高校生にもなってスカートめくりって優しくていい人だね。
And he's sexually frustrated.
そういうところが好きだよ。歩こっか、少し。
いなくてもいいような妹が2人。
いなくてもいいって。
まあ、言っても家族だからさ、険悪ってことはない。だけど、いろいろ迷惑をかけられる。
Family bad terms.
It's
Look,
really
scary.
the like when you complain to someone about something that has it like way worse than you actually.
So you're in the same boat.
聞いてないと思う。
The last 10 minutes don't prove that they don't get along.
お父さんもお母さんも誰もいないよ。私には。言うなら赤の他人なの。血がつながってな赤の他人って吸血鬼が聞いたら笑いそうな話だよね。
笑えねえよ。
Well, wish I knew one.
ままならないもんだよ、本当に。ままならないし、つまらないよ。
Nothing ever goes my I am gonna cry during this series.
誰にやられた？
どうしてそんなことを聞くのかな。どうして荒木くんがそんなことを？
それは多分僕がお前の友達だからだろ。
友達。誰にも言わないって約束してくれる？
うん。そりゃ。
誰にもだよ。
Introducing that idea of would you lie to your family?
殴られたって。それは。
もしも荒木くんが40歳くらいでさ、見も知らぬ17歳の子供買ったような口を聞かれたとして、
Only knows what she knows.
カチンときちゃっても。
Wonder if that's where the saying came from.
なんだその自虐的な言い方は。親ではない親を、娘を殴るような親をかばおうとしている。
It's the perspective of the girl that wished they could be a family.
素直に気持ち悪かった。暴力が仕方ないなんて何言ってんだよ。お前がそんな言葉を吐いちまっていいのか。それはお前が最も許せないことじゃ。
いいじゃない。一回くらい。約束したよね、荒木くん。約束したよね、荒木くん。誰にも言わないって約束してくれたよね。このことは誰にも言わないでください。黙っていてくれたら私何でもするから。
え、マジで？羽川が何でもしてくれるの？待て待て、慌てるな僕。浮き足立つな。こういう時こそクールにだ。おごそかに行け。
あれ、そんなリアクションなの？ここってそういうシーンなの？荒木くんが私の真摯さに心を打たれ、不思議ながらも沈黙を約束してくれる。
Instead of being so happy that he can get something.
なんだそりゃ、知らん。なんでもか。くそ。自分の優柔不断さが悩ましいぜ。こういう時にビシッとつなんできてこそ男の中の男だろうに。
いや、最低の男だ。ねえ、荒木くん。さっきまで私たちが話してたシリアスで重い話。
Honestly, I don't remember.
覚えていない。
覚えてないんだ。
荒木とは誰だ？
自分の名前も忘れちゃったんだ。
なんでもするか。
Don't have to worry about him telling anyone, you know?
Yeah, because he already forgot.
そういえば、羽川は叶える願いの数を限定していない。さっきの言葉、取りようによれば僕の言うことを無限に聞いてくれるという意味じゃないのか。
一つです。何でも一つだけ言うことを聞くから。
釈明させてしまったぜ。
もう頭痛がしてきたよ。
Headache.
羽川を近くの茂みに連れ込んだ。羽川を近くの茂みに連れ込んだ。羽川を近くの茂みに連れ込んだ。
何よ、荒木くん。
Beating around the bush here.
痴漢ってやつ？
羽川
何？
全身を舐めるように見ることが僕のしたいことで
He doesn't want to just ogle.
僕はお前のそのガーゼの下の殴られた傷を舐め回したいのだ
I'm cool with it.
Makes me think about cats and dogs and the licking of their wounds.
We already got Araragi compared to being a dog this episode.
Dog and cat pairings are very cute. I love when a dog and cat interact well. I love that the art style is consistent throughout all of the outros.
吸血鬼だった頃の後遺症が残っている僕の血や唾液は怪我の治療をすることが可能なのだ
Healing abilities.
よくと実際には羽川の顔面を舐め回す度胸のないチキン僕が取ったのはカバンについていた安全ピンで指先を刺してそこから出た血を羽川の幹部に塗るという極めて健全な行為だったりする
We do know that some
it
of the
definitely
things
happened.
that some of the things he says he'll do, he doesn't end up doing.
Ooh, good look.
思わないよ。
That's really sad.
そういう人たちじゃないから私が髪をバッサリ切ってもあの人たちは気づかないんじゃない？
Wow.
多分あの人たちは私の顔も覚えてる。
買い物いや買い物はしていない欲求不満の解消どころかもやもやとした気持ちは増すばかりだ思う思いは重く募るばかり
Great shot.
めちゃくちゃ過酷な環境にも耐えられる生物なのじゃが、潰したら死ぬという弱点を持つ。
Can survive the harshest of conditions, but
Okay, that was Nekomonogatari Black, episode 1. So, if we had watched this, like, chronologically, right, in terms of not how it should be watched, but in order of events, we would have watched Kizu, then this, then Bake, right?
and then Nise.
Yeah.
From what we have seen or starting to see.
Damn, what an interesting... I get why it's 4 episodes. It makes a lot of sense.
It's a
but
condensed story is what I'm guessing that we're telling.
what an interesting choice to tell it to us now. I feel like it might be quite a bit hard if we go into specifics, but like later on in the following episodes. But regardless, I'm really happy that we're getting more
Do you mean
about
emotionally
Tsubasa.
hard? Like
yeah.
it'll be emotionally hard on us? I would
Correct.
agree. But it does make sense at the moment that I feel like if you were a viewer that was given the Hanakawa love story basically first and then saw that Araki doesn't pick her, I could see that being like maybe a major turnoff for some viewers. Like they would be so like if Hanakawa was the first one that you really came to know and you were really rooting for like a love story between Araki and Hanakawa, I could see it being very defeating to not see like a major happy ending for Hanakawa after really getting her story, especially when we know like there are a lot of themes in her story that are just already really traumatic, really hard to handle. We want the best for her. So it makes sense that it wouldn't be something you'd get right out of the gate.
Like you're saying that if you went about watching Kizu and then this, the feelings that you'd have towards Hanekawa might be different and conflicting with the approach of meeting characters like Senjugahara.
I think there would be more of an upset.
As
and
a
maybe
viewer?
even as a viewer. I think there are some I feel like some viewers would be able to handle, or appreciate
yeah.
kind of seeing, well, obviously she wasn't the right person.
Mhm.
Like, yes, they can love each other and they can have feelings for each other. That doesn't mean they're going to be the end game, the person that is the right person, is the soulmate. And I think that it's an easier transition to get a little bit of Hanakawa, get Senjugahara kind of at the same time, and then learn about Hanakawa's feelings after we already know what Senjugahara and Aragi's current feelings are for each other. And it's still sad. Like, obviously, the end of Bake is still sad for Hanakawa. Like, we still are like, oh, this hurts. It still hurts. But I feel like there are some viewers that could have been majorly turned off by that order of events. Like, if they had gotten Hanakawa's story first.
Interesting. I'm wondering how much we're going to see other than Hanekawa, because it doesn't feel like we are or should, maybe other than like the sisters, because it kind of makes sense. They had a really good moment this episode, Tsukihi specifically, in talking to Araragi. One of the craziest metamorphoses that we see within this series is Araragi going from I don't want to have friends, I don't like, not a concept, to I'm in love with somebody potentially. How do I know if I'm in love with them? To Bakemonogatari and Senogahara.
I feel like that example alone of Aragi and his views on friendship is something that comes into play again with how he speaks on his family, especially in this episode. We have him talking about them like they're not close and no one would miss them. That sort of language that we've gotten before from him before we got Nisemonogatari. And I feel like before Nisemonogatari, we could have believed him a little bit more in terms of his lack of relationship with his sisters, his lack of understanding and closeness, their lack of like existing dynamic. And then Nisei comes in and shows us an after events dynamic and a kind of what would happen if we start to open up a little bit more to each other, understand like in current maturity.
Is it intentionally torturous? Sorry, I'm stumbling. It's very hot in the room we're recording in. Is it intentionally malicious to the viewer in like a funny way that we are having to watch a series primarily about Hanekawa's family after a series about our family and it ending in a
totally
pretty wholesome way in all things considered?
I think that's what makes the line and that conversation in that moment more potent in terms of like our feelings toward Aragi saying what he's saying, because now we're realizing from the first 10 minutes of this episode that it wasn't the situation where after the events of Bake and Kizu, he was able to, repair a dynamic with his sisters and come to a better understanding of, I'm maturing, are we growing apart, we're coming to a new understanding of each other. They did have an existing close relationship. He was literally asking them love advice in the first 10 minutes of this episode. And they were like joking with each other. They had the same dynamic that they had in Nisemonogatari. And it's hard to see that that's the case because we've only been able to go off of kind of how Araragi talks about his family in previous Monogatari series pieces of work. And to hear him say that they're not particularly close, especially after what we get at the beginning of this episode, in knowing who we're talking to, it definitely hurts. It's very tortuous.
I want to read the first title card that we got. Let's recall the events of that ominous golden week that I spent flirting with Hanekawa Tsubasa to my heart's content. They're bitter memories, they're sour memories, but somewhere deep down there's sweetness to be found. Let's recall the events of those 9 golden days, events that I want to forget if possible, and even if not, I want to undo them. Time-wise, it was during the 2 weeks of my spring break between my 2nd and 3rd years in high school, during the month I experienced hell itself. It was such a time. She was bewitched by a cat, a felid, a carnivore, a mammal. Ever since, I can't stand cats. I'm afraid of cats, yes, just as I'm afraid of Hanekawa Tsubasa. Now, please let me tell you about a dream I saw last night. And then we get Araragi waking up after already being woken up by his sisters.
They are bitter memories. They are sour memories. I mean, we're definitely feeling that from like the viewer's perspective. With what little we know of what transpires in this piece of the past with Hanekawa, it is something that is bitter and sour to us already. And to come from the perspective that we're starting off with Araragi questioning whether or not he's in love with her, I feel like this is going to be a bit emotional. Not even a bit, maybe like more than a bit, because they're starting the first episode off pretty strong with the emotions.
Yeah.
With me feeling uncomfortable, sad, frustrated. I'm going to use a word that Aragi was at the beginning of this episode.
I would like to take a second and like scroll a little bit around episode 11 of Bake. It's slightly tragic because we don't have the actual good version of Bakemonogatari anymore on this computer, so I'm on Crunchyroll's trash version. But it's when we initially get the scene of them walking with Hanekawa with the patch on her face and that conversation about her dad, and to have it reworked in almost the exact same way, but just adding a little bit of context before and after, it completely changes my interpretation of it, even though the core message of like a feeling of what happened to Tsubasa hasn't changed. You know what I mean?
There's two really important parts of the conversation that are still the same in terms of content, which is the obvious, like, don't tell anyone.
It's like, hey, okay, I'll do it. And then we notice the cat there. And then in what we're seeing now, it's a continuation of what goes on. You know what I mean?
The other thing that's in the conversation, other than don't tell anyone, is the initial kind of bringing up of the family. Something that we get in terms of dialogue in this episode is wordage like know-it-all, that how would you feel if you were a 40-something-year-old man and a 17-year-old girl was talking to you like she knows everything?
Yeah.
And during the reaction, you were like, she only knows what she knows, which is like such a heartbreaking phrase now if you think about it in that context of like how you'd feel internally if you were Hanekawa being told by someone and hit by someone who's frustrated, calling you a know-it-all. So many other things they're probably saying to you in this instance, the lack of love that's there, the awful moment that you're in with this guy that isn't even your father, but you were hoping could be your father. And that idea, that her phrase that we've heard her say so many times is she only knows what she knows. I just imagine like the kid within her being called a know-it-all, and all she's saying internally to herself is, I only know what I know. But if she said that out loud to the father figure, it'd be seen as sassy. It would be seen as talking back.
It's so, like, obviously I don't want to trust anything that Crunchyroll subtitles tells us. I don't trust anything they say. But in terms of, like, the one-for-one of watching back in Bakemonogatari, like, the language seems very similar up into that point of, I'm begging you, all right, I'll do it, you know? Like, that's the changing moment. We don't get anything about, like, in the underpass, you know?
I think that another reason why this scene is nice in terms of like what dialogue we're getting, and nice in terms of order of what we've watched, is the idea of Aragi's willingness to lie to specifically his family. Like, Hanekawa says don't tell anyone, but she starts with saying don't tell your sisters, your family. Like, she's starting with the idea of keeping a secret from his family, which I think shows that she does realize there is a difference in terms of like when Aragi says he's not particularly close to his family and when she would say it. And it takes me back to Nisemonogatari, with the ending of the series being Aragi saying for his family he's willing to lie. For his family he's willing to sin and take on that idea of, is that fundamentally evil to lie to them? Yes, he will do it. He will do that sort of thing for people he cares about.
Cat injured, we saw it. We asked for help. Aragi gave it. We didn't see it. In this situation, cat injured, blood, healed wound, right?
So is the cat just in the first iteration in Bake, is it not actually there? And it's more like metaphorical?
Yes. And also, but I'm wondering, like, depending on what happens after this, the idea of forgetting everything that happened, right? In terms of looking back on it, in Bake, were we looking back on something that we've already forgotten? You know what I mean? Like, in terms of, like, what we were allowed to see, what they actually showed us, because we're seeing something different. I don't know. I'm being crazy right now. The heat's getting to me. There was another example of text in After What We're Talking About, thankfully, about what Aragi should ask for, right? Once he breaks into that character. And
I like you phrasing it, breaking into a character, because you could, like, think about how you'd view this moment. I know you're hot I'm so sorry.
But no, I was about to like be like, how long have we spent with Araragi at this point? Is it so easily? Are we still going to be completely delusional and be like, yeah, it's just horny Araragi all the time?
Oh, he's being. I can't
like,
believe
yes,
he's disregarding her emotional feelings right now by
yes,
pretending that this
yes.
is so important to him.
But like, Araragi also is going to do shit that might not surface level immediately, like realize that it's taking you out of a really fucking fucked up place, but it's helping ground you and take you out of the place that you're in emotionally.
I think it grounds you in Aragi himself. Like it makes me think of Hachikuji, like how she identifies certain specific things being really important to how she views Aragi and his personality and the fun they have together. What it is to be her friend, Aragi.
Something must be wrong. You didn't come up and touch me. Like
right. Like, and so here he's grounding Hanakawa in the friendship. He's grounding her in 5 minutes prior to them starting to have like more of a deep conversation here. He says the word friend and she reacts to it. This is him being so flamboyantly himself.
Okay, so let's break it down. If you have had a horrific tragedy happen to you within your family or within your life, you might make jokes about it to your friends to try to deal with the grief and deal with the pain. However, unless you are very close and have a very specific relationship with somebody, and the immediacy of that horrific event, that friend won't joke to you about it, even with great intention, because 9 times out of 10, it's not going to actually be effective in helping that person.
Yeah.
It's not going to help them dissociate from that grief by joking about it if you're the person making the joke about it. However, if you're a friend and are going to take the situation you're in and make yourself look like a fucking idiot, like in the way that Araragi does, if that is somewhat your intention, that is one of the best ways to go about removing them from the emotional tragedy and trauma they're in currently.
It's less dangerous too, because I feel like, as you brought up, like there's definitely cases of closeness in friendships where you can joke with your friend over some, if you know that is a style of their grief is humor. But that also can be dangerous because people also fluctuate in their mood.
Yeah.
You could be getting them on a bad day where they're not in the mood to joke as they normally would. And so it can be like a can of worms that you might not want to open all of the time. And so what he's doing here is like much safer option, which you said is kind of making a fool of himself. Some people could take it be from a critical angle and be like, are you making light of her trauma by it? But no, this shows the scope of their
girl
friendship.
Literally told you that her dad beat her, and then your mind only goes to what you can get from it sexually.
From her. Yeah.
But like, he didn't buy the magazine.
He didn't buy the magazine.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. He didn't buy the magazine. Miss Tsubasa will do whatever you demand of her, Araragi. Anything. Who's that, Miss Tsubasa? Ooh.
That one had some more text on it. Woohoo. They always go so quickly. Okay, it's coming.
I was considering asking her to pretend to be a teacher, and I accidentally said it. There were some great shots this episode of Araragi and
like angles of his
Tsukihi.
face.
Angles of his face. We had like a shot that looked like he was like a sailor, like Popeye.
Yeah.
Like
I
crazy.
liked the punch.
Yeah. That Tsukihi looked insane this episode. It was crazy was the right, terminology for it. There's one like nostril shot of her. Yeah, this one.
I feel like we got a lot of mouth and nostril stuff of Tsukihi actually, in terms of and facial expressions. We got some really wild ones of Tsukihi in this. Which, like you said during the reaction, she was coming off as very Araragi-esque.
Yeah. Even like the mannerisms.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting. What'd you think of the OP? Tonally, it makes a lot of sense, it feels like. And genuinely, though, I loved it.
You were like, soap opera?
Yeah.
Monogatari?
I really like it, though. It might be one of my favorite OPs so far, even though it's a massive change of tone compared to the rest.
Mm-hmm. I'll be excited to see it again. I think one of the topics that I'd want to bring up before we end this discussion is I like how they spoke on questions like, what do you like about a person? How do you know that you're in love? That sort of topic.
708.
Questions like that are like a pet peeve of mine. Like, I really get irked for some reason by people asking questions like that because they're placing merit on your answers. Like, they're judging your answers, and your answers are telling them how good is your love in comparison to that. And I like that there was a line that was like, the reasons you're coming up with are all lies.
Yeah, so I have it pulled up. Let the whole sequence play out, though. You could make up loads of excuses like how he's so cool, nice, tall, rich, handsome. You can come up with the reasons like that, but they're all just lies. And then lies you say to try to justify your feelings. One of my favorite lines is here. Pretense, in other words, in the end, they're just excuses. You begin by concluding that you're in love, then climb a ladder to reach that conclusion. I love it. It's so good.
This scene, it just makes me unbelievably happy because I absolutely hate when people kind of judge based on like this. And also it's always like you're asked in this rapid fire way where you have to come up with like this grand elevator pitch of your love for another person. I think that I honestly get a red flag when when people answer the question and other people are like, yay, that was such a good answer, you must really love them. I'm like, it's kind of weird to me that you were able to come up with such a concise way to put your love in like a little sentence, you know?
What's the opposite of that? Is it when you break up with somebody and then all your friends tell you how much of a piece of shit they thought they were? Yeah. My favorite shot this episode was at the end when it's Araragi talking and then he blinks and the shutter blinks with him and it opens it back up from his perspective and we get to see Hanakawa like open up a blink. It was everything. I loved it.
The last thing that I'm going to bring up is just a line of devastation.
Touchscreen in reference
to me, that's like a
Chestnut.
line of devastation. You're so
I have
right.
Never heard that before. That was incredible. Sorry,
why
go
are
on.
we always judging? What was it? Small boobies will have their day?
That is
from another show that we've watched.
The girl said.
Yes, and a girl has said that in that
proceeded
show.
to have the opposite in that next sequel series. Yeah. Go on.
I'm gonna end with a line of devastation, because I feel like a lot of Nekomonogatari Black is gonna be kind of emotionally devastating for me. I can imagine that it will be at least a little bit, especially if Aragi is like prefacing this whole series off with like, this is stuff I want to forget, and this is really sour and bitter, you know, but there's some sweet moments. Is Hanakawa saying nothing ever goes my way.
Yeah.
She's already saying that in this first episode before what we know of Bakemonogatari.
Do you think we get Oshino?
In this? Ooh.
I'm like, we're not going to get Yozuru, Yotsugi. We're probably not going to get Kaiki, of course. But like timeline-wise.
We might get Oshino.
That'd be kind of crazy.
I did just think of 2 more things, if you'll bear with me.
Sure.
Okay. I could chop my hair off and they wouldn't notice.
Oh, perfect.
Which
is terrifyingly sad. That being said,
but in terms of like context of what actually happens in the show and how we use hair, I think that was a really nice line for kind of order of events of how you would watch the show. And then the outro credit, like of talking, I thought it was really the context of what we were talking about, the content was really interesting that we could apply to this series, which we were talking about an animal that can survive the harshest of conditions, but that there is something that can completely crush it, even though it can survive the literal harshest of conditions. And if we like look at it through the lens of like, look through that lens and look at Hanakawa, like she really is, like she's surviving through incredibly harsh conditions. But what is it that makes Black Hanakawa come out? You know? What do we know from Bakemonogatari? Yeah.
I thought of one more thing, too, in terms of sounds like the kind of thing that would make a vampire laugh, doesn't it? About family not being blood related.
Oh, kindred being the word that,
So good. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, subscribe. We hope to see you next time.